Can I just make one last point?
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing, we've got to get the message across, not just the politicians and economists and decision makers, but also the public, because in many countries green infrastructure is well known, but in perhaps the developed countries, this happened recently, an example in the UK, when they were showing that upper catchment management would be a good solution of problems in the lower catchment. But what did they do? They put in more flood defences, because it was concrete, it was walls, it was something people could see. And that's what they wanted. The politicians wanted it, and the public wanted it. Because they had been flooding, and they wanted to see someone coming along and building a bigger flood wall around their town. And it was an absolute massive, and this happens all the time, because people are not really aware or trust in these sort of natural solutions.
Going all together. No, I think there's some good points. You're looking for something very high.
Can I invite everyone to come back to the sort of theater-style seating and we'll get some reports back from the work breakout room, please?
That's what they wanted to get. I mean, I don't even think the choice is put to a decision that people, politicians, the environment agency that are responsible for it, they basically, I don't know who made the decision, because I was involved in some work looking at these options, and we thought these upper catchment options were going to go ahead. Suddenly they weren't happening. We asked why aren't we going ahead? They said because they prefer to build the walls higher, and the reason is because that provides a more tangible, literally concrete to see.
But because
We did self-select a guilty rapporteur, an example from the Society for Restoration, who is now desperately trying to pass his notes and read the report back. He's not getting away with that. Sasha, the floor is yours.
So basically, we're just looking at the messages for each of the questions. Okay. So the first question, successful examples. We had a couple of examples from India. One was very interesting in terms of a land concession to landowners, where an NGO stepped in and offered 25% above the normal timber or resource concession to have a land for strict biodiversity conservation, and a number of multiple co-benefits flowed from that. In Bolivia, there was a cost-benefit analysis where a road was analyzed, impact study, and finally decided that it wouldn't be cost-effective to do the road. And then another example was from Lake Chilica, where the community stakeholders, farmers, worked directly with NGOs and engineers to work out an annual flow management system so that both fisheries and agriculture would be satisfied and productive. The barriers. I guess the most common barrier that we identified was not speaking the same language. And that when we do speak the same language, it tends to be a one-way street from the conservation sector to the other sectors. There was a feeling among some in the group that really it should be the other way around, or at least a two-way street where people are communicating, using the same language, understanding each other. And then the further barrier, once that language was put into place and understood, was an ideological shift that needed to occur. Let's see. The other point in terms of barriers was that ecosystem service evaluation does not fully capture all the externalities, and this often leads to certain perversities in terms of the impact of decision making. Things like pollution costs adversely affecting human health aren't part of the transaction costs, and therefore don't fully capture all those externalities. And quickly, steps needed to strengthen the case for investment. We are, one of the things that came out was that we are not learning. We are not, we don't have a memory for our catastrophes and our disasters that just hit us in 2004 or in 2007, 2008. Just a short time ago, several years ago, we're not learning from those events. The other thing in terms of the case for investment, the next steps would be communicating the benefits, disseminating the best practices, and again, going back to a common language. We need to use completed projects, successful projects that have a long track record. We can't be using pilot studies. We can't continue to use trials and experiments to make the case for investment. Then there was the last point there was in terms of looking at stocks as well as flows. We feel as though the emphasis on flows is a little too much sometimes, and that we really need to look at our stocks of natural capital in order to be effective to make a case for investment. Thank you.
Can I ask something from the group in the back? Either come up or just because the microphone in the middle.
So as regards to successful examples for each strategy made with more finances for natural infrastructure, the group said that there are lots of examples. For example, one mentioned was the GNC cities water funds. There are cities investing in watersheds that feed cities. But the problem is that there are different examples and cases, but they must come together to have a look at experiences, identify gaps and learnings, etc. So it's also a barrier that there is no adequate platform to bring information together about successful or not so successful cases. Then as regards to barrier, another one is that there is no sufficient funding for this, so that is a big challenge. But there are still some cases that can show that funding it's possible to find. And well, also mark that as a barrier is that there is information available in different initiatives, but information is disaggregated. The information is diffuse and there is no sufficient synthesis, so there's a need to work on that. And then there is a need to make sure that local communities are involved to invest in their capacities in what they need. So the social side is fundamental. Also was mentioned that tackling perhaps the people's income can be vital, not only focusing on conservation and protection of nature, but to look at the socio-economic side of nature conservation, so they might adopt such ideas. And also that to show that natural infrastructure can be a way for combating poverty, especially in the rural areas. And when it comes to scaling up, there are successful cases and not so successful cases. So in order to scale up, the group mentioned that we need a joint action on the ground, bringing diverse groups together and learn from what it works and what it does not work, identifying priorities and what is the evidence telling us. And then a more active process that is positioning information and actors relating to governmental policies and national dialogues into high-level dialogues, and through that, the trust that you build, invite them to give advice on policy on these matters. But this is a long-run process. It's not made overnight, so that is also a challenge of how to do it, to make it a reality. If I forgot something, please
Okay, thank you. Next is the layman, who was in the scaling up discussion.
Hi everybody, so we had a discussion of scaling up and a specific example from WWF Global Initiative in the heart of Borneo, where they've just produced a report on investing in nature for a green economy, and where they look at the valuation of natural capital. And two challenges were pointed out in that discussion, or two gaps. The first being the fact that we often are not speaking with the right government partners, including particularly ministries of finance, planning, economy, or making the kind of decisions we need to be influencing. And also with two critical gaps, again being the evidence-based, which I think we've discussed about, but also turning information into economic impact assessments and not stopping with valuation. I mean, in particular point on that it's not enough just to say the value of an ecosystem service is this much. We need to turn that into figures that ministers of economy and planning can understand are meaningful to them, such as jobs lost or gained, and values of production lost or gained. We also, the point was made that we also need to capture the intangible benefits, which is also a challenge because those are going to change according to the specific geographic and social conditions. On building the evidence base, we had two particular questions to the World Bank that we discussed. The first being, to what extent does their analysis of brain infrastructure take into account the human dynamic, how people interact with risk reduction facilities, and that perhaps that there's a more natural connection with natural infrastructure, and apparently that is a point that they've realized that people do have they're more familiar with natural infrastructures, and that can be a plus. There was also the question of how much, to what extent is the bank, the large finance institutions like that, investing in research to build the evidence base on natural infrastructure, and was an acknowledgement that for the moment it is quite a small part of their activities because natural capital project, natural infrastructure projects are low budget projects, so they don't fit into mega financing projects, and the comment was made, governments don't ask us for them. And so we had a discussion, and then the comment made that particularly in some countries, institutions like the World Bank have a major influence on decision making, and they should be using that role to promote greater awareness of natural solutions. In terms of barriers, so we talked about the evidence barrier, including the complexity of showing cause and effect. Again, the institutional and mindset inertia, because cement is what people know and do. We know how to buy it, we know how to put it down. Talked about funding and procurement barriers. And then in terms of some steps to move forward, we had 3 points on that. The need for guidance on how to integrate the evaluation of natural capital, natural infrastructures, and cost-benefit analysis and project design. I know this is a challenge within WWF, projects that are interested, but they don't know how to go about this. So some guidance on how to do that, what kind of proxy measures they could use to start gathering more better evidence. Capitalizing on existing knowledge, even if sporadic, but making a more systematic attempt to capture what we know and translating that into norms, standards, and guidelines. And then finally, raising awareness and communicating about natural infrastructures or hybrid approaches, not only to key decision makers, but also to the public who also trust cement. I don't know if I've forgotten anything.
All right, thank you. And to our last group.